Following a New York Times story involving the FBI's counterintelligence investigation into Trump and his ties to Russia, the Washington Post released a report indicating that Trump has been very secretive in his meetings with Vladimir Putin, so secretive that he actually, in some cases, prevents interpreters from being in those meetings. And in one case, in one meeting with Putin, he told the interpreter not to share the notes with anyone. So according to this Greg Miller report in the Washington Post, Trump has gone to extraordinary lengths to conceal details of his conversations with Putin, including on at least one occasion, taking possession of the notes of his own interpreter and instructing the linguist not to discuss what had transpired with other administration officials.
Can I just pause there? Sorry,
Sure.
Anna. That is extraordinary. No one has ever seen anything like that before. They went and talked to all the former officials. Hey, did you ever have a president say, hey, in this meeting, everybody get out of the room. I don't want any aides. I don't want anybody else listening in. I'm just gonna have a conversation with this foreign leader. Never, never. Grabbing the interpreter's notes? What? What? So, and does Trump do it with other officials? Maybe it's this thing, oh, he's got some sort of privacy fetish or whatever. And now, again, I don't mean to say it a fetish, we all should have privacy, but he's the president of the United States. He needs other people in the room. So let me quickly explain why he needs it. Number one, when you're negotiating or even having a conversation, not about a particular treaty or anything like that, but about your relationship with another country, you need to make sure things are clear. You need other people in the room to confirm that there was no miscommunication. That is super important. You need other people in the room taking notes so they can execute later on what you agreed on. That is true in business meetings, in small business meetings, let alone giant meetings between two of the most powerful nations on earth. When somebody says, take everybody else out of the room, they're about to discuss something that is secret about them, not in regards to the US. Other people have security clearance, they need to be in that room. Come on, man, how can you not see that he's obviously has some secret deal with Putin that he doesn't even want the interpreter to know. He doesn't want to get out in any way, shape, or form. And he doesn't, as far as we can tell, does not do it with other governments. It's not like, hey, I'm meeting with the leader of Canada, everybody get out of the room. No, it's just when it's Putin, everybody get out of the room, get out of the room. I gotta get my notes from my boss.
And the fact that he went the extra mile to talk to the interpreter and ensure that that person does not share the notes with anyone or talk about the meeting with anyone is also telling. Now that meeting took place in 2017 in Hamburg, but there were other meetings that were held in privacy. So US officials said that there was no detailed record, even in classified files, of Trump's face-to-face interactions with the Russian leader at 5 locations over the past 2 years. So in one instance, he was talking to Putin at length. No one else was part of that conversation. No one else was present. And there's no record of what they discussed, how they discussed it. And one of the concerns by his aides, some of whom spoke to the Washington Post in private or anonymously for this story, said, look, aides are hyper aware of possible manipulation that could take place. So it could be possible that Trump is being manipulated by Putin, but he's completely unaware that he's being manipulated. And so aides following these meetings will put together these reports that help to inform the president so he can move forward in the best way possible. But it's impossible to do it if no one's present and if all of these meetings are taking place in secrecy. One other thing that I thought was kind of amusing in this piece was the aides put together the reports and then they share it with Trump and administration officials. But oftentimes when he meets with world leaders, negative things are said about Trump and his administration officials. And so they're usually a little reluctant to share that information with Trump. But in the case of Putin, they don't even get the opportunity to do that.
So look, it got worse and worse as it went along. First in Hamburg, there's the interpreter and Rex Tillerson, who's the Secretary of State. Now, why did he allow Rex Tillerson to stay in the room? One of my original theories, which is still very much active, is that the former CEO of ExxonMobil, that's Rex Tillerson, was brought in to be Secretary of State, which is super weird, completely out of the blue, random, never heard of before, to be the Secretary of State. Why? Because there was a $500 billion deal with the Russians on oil, where ExxonMobil had the deal with the Russian oligarchs. So did they discuss that deal? And that's why Trump maybe felt comfortable with Rex Tillerson being in the room. So, and then Rex Tillerson, after that meeting and other things go awry, is like, I gotta get out of here. Because God knows what he said. And then he grabs the interpreter's notes. And if you're Tillerson, you're probably thinking, I thought it was gonna be subtle. But this idiot is just saying things in the room with Vladimir Putin with an interpreter. Oh my God. And that is why later, among the reasons why Tillerson called him an effing moron, okay? And then ran out of his administration with his hair on fire. So Tillerson's now gone. And now that's in Hamburg. In Helsinki, there is no Tillerson, no other official, only the two interpreters. And then it gets worse in other meetings where Putin and him go just talk one-on-one. Only Putin's interpreter is there. So we don't even have a US interpreter. Oh, come on, you're telling me that the president of the United States is going to meetings with any foreign government, let alone an adversary, without even using our interpreter. How do you know if his interpreter is interpreting things correctly? I mean, that is preposterous. Okay, even if you think that he has, I mean, at this point, really, you'd have to be mental to think he doesn't have some deal with the Russians. Absolutely insane. No, this is all normal. Presidents go and don't even use interpreters when they're meeting with adversaries. It's just, you're wrong, it's not even close to true. But even if you think there is no deal, well, look at this guy's a buffoon. He was asking the Defense Department, it was a different story out today, hey, why can't we just blow up Iranian boats? Defense Secretary Jim Mattis is like, because it would then start a war. Do you want to start a war? No, I just want to blow up their boats. So at a bare minimum, with no one else in the room, do you know how easy it would be to manipulate and take advantage of this fool of fools? A guy who does not understand any of the consequences of his actions? What did he promise the Russians, even if he was on the level? And then is he going to follow through? And then if we don't follow through, does the word of the United States government mean anything? I mean, it is both deeply incompetent while also being deeply corrupt.
And when you take the fact that he insists on having these meetings in secrecy and couple it with all the other potentially incriminating aspects of Trump's relationship with Vladimir Putin, it draws a picture that's hard for Trump and his administration officials to deny. I mean, he has pushed for policies that are favorable to Russia, including making statements about how Russia is entitled to annexing Crimea. He has been very hesitant to impose sanctions on Russia. The fact that he fired Comey and openly said on various occasions that he did so because of the Russia investigation, once on television, and the second time when he met with Russian officials in the Oval Office. I mean, how is it that and by the way, every other day there's a Twitter storm, a tweet storm about how there was no collusion, even though there was nothing to provoke that reaction from Trump on Twitter. Just out of nowhere, he'll bring up Russia. It's incredible. Now, he was asked about these secret meetings, and he claims, no, I'm not hiding anything. Of course, he was on Judge Jeanine Pirro's show, and she's very favorable and complimentary to Trump, so he was in good company. But here's what he had to say about this Washington Post report.
Why not release the conversation that you had with President Putin in Helsinki, along with some other stuff that might involve the FISA, Broussard, and the whole lot of them?
Well, Janine, I would. I don't care. I mean, I had a conversation like every president does. You sit with the president of various countries. I do it with all countries. We had a great conversation. We were talking about Israel and securing Israel and lots of other things. And it was a great conversation. I'm not keeping anything under wraps. I couldn't care less. I mean, it's so ridiculous. These people make it up. Washington Post, that's basically the lobbyist for Amazon. You know, he uses that Bezos, who's got bigger problems than anybody right now.
God, what an embarrassment Judge Jeanine Pirro is. I mean, and the fact that she still uses the label judge in her show. But anyway.
So everything you said, as usual, is totally false and a lie on purpose. So on the Hamburg meeting, Rex Tillerson did a small readout of some of the topics that were considered. But then, okay, so let's say that you're a Secretary of State and you don't want to make it public. That's totally reasonable, okay? So you got to separate out things that make sense from ones that are extraordinary, right? But then within the Trump administration, his own national security advisor asked both Trump and Tillerson, hey, can you tell me what happened in the meeting so we could all prepare? Because I'm the national security advisor. I have to know what we said to the Russians. And even Tillerson refused to tell H.R. McMaster what happened. What? That is record-shatteringly unprecedented. That where the Secretary of State says to the National Security Advisor or the Defense Secretary or everyone in the government, no, I won't tell you what we talked to the Russians about. And then you go turn to the president and he's like, not only will I not tell you, I stole the interpreter's notes. You wanna say, hey, he didn't steal them? He just grabbed them and he has a right to grab them. Okay, if you don't think that's curious or suspicious, there's something wrong with you. Your cognitive abilities need a little bit of repair, okay? And then, okay, like I said, it got worse every time. In Helsinki, there's only the interpreters. He doesn't even allow anybody else in. And again, he tells the interpreters, you are not allowed to say anything about this meeting to anyone. Then he only uses Putin's interpreter. He doesn't want any Americans in the room. Okay, so here are more cases. In 2017, there was a global conference and only Putin's interpreter was present. That's one of the ones that I'm referring to. And then they had another conversation at the G20 summit in Buenos Aires last month. And again, Trump refused to have anyone else. He just would pull Putin aside with Putin's interpreter and they'd have a conversation where they were making they're obviously having a literal secret conversation that our president does not want anyone else in the United States government to know about. Just let that sink in. The president does not want his own Secretary of State, his Secretary of Defense, or his National Security Advisor to know what he secretly told the Russian president. Okay, if you still think there's no secret deal, you're not that bright. Okay, so sorry, but that's the reality. And by the way, we know who the interpreter in Helsinki is. Somebody get her some protection. I'm not remotely joking. Luckily, we don't know the identity of the interpreter in Hamburg. I hope the FBI and the special counsel know his or her identity, but do not, please, other media organizations, don't reveal their names. I'm not kidding. And look, you might say, hey, as journalists, it's our job to find out, and I hear you, but you're putting their lives in danger. So Putin has people assassinated on a regular basis. If there's only one other person in the room that heard what Trump and Putin are talking about, their lives are definitely in danger. On the go? Don't worry, we got you covered. You can still listen to TYT at our new podcast network. Find us on Apple Podcasts, the Google Play Store, or at tyt.com/podcast.